utilitarian type of thing. We're more direct in our communication. I'll tell you exactly what I'm thinking. Let's cut to the chase, that kind of stuff. And then getting things done is what is valued. These represent kind of extremes, and different cultures will be either high context or low context. How many of you think that, or how many would you guess, what would you guess the United States of America in general to be? Okay, low context, absolutely. Where is a high context culture that you can think of? What's that? Yeah? Yeah. So, common history together, obligation to one another, being together, This doesn't mean like these people don't like other human beings and these people do. It's just a different kind of space and interaction that we have with other folks. Not just physical space, but also, kind of that history, that shared experience that we have as well. What's happening?
We were talking, the travel safety guy that came in talked about an Italy woman that came to his place and that his friend was married, and she it was a sweet thing. She just went over to his other side, jumped his bed, and gave him a kiss, good morning, and then
very high context. Too much. How many of you are huggers? You like hugging? Some of us are not, so just back off. It doesn't mean that I don't like you. It just means I don't know you that well. Okay, social organization. Okay, these are just dimensions of culture, okay? Social organization. There are some cultures that are more collectivist. This actually builds on that space dimension that we just shared. Collectivist versus individualist, okay? An individualistic culture or person, very self-reliant, asks the question, what's best for me? And then our uniquenesses are emphasized. You are unique and wonderfully made. You are special. You have gifts. You are one of a kind. Those kind of things. That's more of an individualistic. Whereas a collectivist culture would rely on each other more. We might ask the question, what's best for all of us? And then the uniquenesses about us are minimized. So if this is a classroom, for example, in Beijing, we might not emphasize the fact that you all are unique and wonderfully made differently. It would be, it's a collective group of you, and collectively you are learning. And by the way, because you're all a group and you're learning together, it's okay for you to share homework, share test scores, cheat on, well, not cheat, it's just sharing information. Why? Because it's collectivist culture. You're not necessarily graded as individuals, we're going to grade you kind of together. So different cultures will look at this whole social organization aspect differently based on either this collectivism or individualistic. I won't ask you what you think the United States of America is. I imagine you've already figured that one out. And that's not to say it's a bad thing. These are just different. We have different values. Here's the point though, and we'll get to this later, but when you find yourself in another culture that doesn't have the same kind of values that you were born and raised with, our immediate reaction typically is to kind of push away from that, to resist that, to say, oh, that's weird, or oh, that's gross, or oh, that's different, oh, why do they do that? And we kind of push ourselves away from it as opposed to embracing it, stepping into it, and for you guys saying, okay, this is a learning experience for me. And so what can I learn from this? And so you lean into it as opposed to leaning away from it and resisting it. Okay? And if you could, here's the other thing. If you can do this in a short-term experience like you're having, whether it's a week or 2 weeks that you're gone, or even a semester that you're gone, these kind of principles that you learn through a cross-cultural experience like you're having, an education abroad experience like you're having, that'll be able to be applied all through life. Because isn't it true, when we interact with another human being who's very different from us, maybe different theologically, maybe different in values, belief systems, what do we naturally do? Or what do we tend to do? We kind of resist that person. We're attracted to sameness. We're attracted to people who are like us, who think like us, who believe like us, who vote like us. And when we find people who don't, I can't have anything to do with them. That's not how Jesus modeled his life. And so as we get to know people through an experience like you're having, these can be lifelong lessons that you can take with you even after that. Let's go on. Speaking of, worldview. So collectively you can see that in the world there is a way to view the world that is focused on Christ, and there's a way to view the world that would not be. Worldview is the core of culture. It's really that under the waterline type of things, those values, those assumptions those ultimate allegiances. So what are those, or what is that people have? And so this lens through which we view the world, everybody has at the core of who they are a worldview. How they understand reality. If this was philosophy class, like I teach here sometimes, we would talk about metaphysics and how we literally understand reality. And so what is the way in which you see the world? How do you understand the world around you? What is true? What is right? What is good? These types of things. Everybody has those kind of, they wrestle with those questions. And so again, when you're interacting with somebody who has a very different worldview from you, what is our natural reaction? We either put them in a category of right or wrong, or what I would encourage you to consider is sometimes it's just different. Now, don't let this, I don't want to cloud, and there be cloud in here about ultimate truth and absolute truth. I believe in the truth of Jesus Christ. I believe Jesus is absolute truth for us and embodies that. But even when you're interacting with someone from another religion, another religious background, we're so quick to jump on the right or wrong. It could be that it's just different. It could be that maybe you don't have it completely clear, and maybe they have a little bit more clarity than you do on certain things. So, right, wrong, different, we always jump into that. Here's the cool thing. When you interact with people who are not you, and you start to learn a little bit more about them beyond just kind of the external stuff, and you get to know their hearts and their beliefs and these kind of things, you get to hear another person's perspective. And when you get to interact with somebody who is different from you and learn their perspective, you start to see things a little bit differently as well. I don't know if you've ever been on the Canadian side of Mount Rushmore, but it's a different perspective. And you wouldn't know unless you go over there and you see that. So the same would be said for all the places that you're going. You maybe have studied about different people, groups that you're going to or the countries you're going to, but the fact that you actually get to go there and meet with them and talk with them, you will be changed. Your perspectives will change. Why? Because I took you out of the classroom and I brought you in another class. I took you out of one culture, you left, you went into another culture, and now you're starting to see things differently. You'll come back with a different perspective. All right, biological variation. So, this is quite simple, but oftentimes this is the one where a lot of people get hung up on, is we look at kind of the external, what people look like. And oftentimes we make judgments on that, or assumptions or whatever, but there is a biological variation that we have among people. Body builds, facial features, I can't speak this word, skin tone, genetic predisposition. And then so those are things that we get from mom and dad. They're passed down to us through mom and dad. Condition, though, are things that our culture kind of ingrains in us. So accents are a great example of this. I was interacting with Hugh's sister. I don't know if any of you know Hugh. He's from Vietnam. His sister goes to school in South Carolina. And when I talked to Hugh, he's starting to get an Indiana accent. And there is an Indiana accent. If you're not from Indiana, you'll find that there is one. We say things like fur instead of for. But anyway, so Hugh has this, but his sister is from South Carolina. Anybody from South Carolina here or from the South? Okay. His sister has this but both of them, English was their second language. So they were conditioned in the geographical locations where they first started learning English and where they were practicing their English and learning English more. They're getting an accent. Okay, so that's a conditioned thing. Physical changes that we make to ourselves. So biological variation is one that a lot of times people get caught up in this. And of course, this can be problematic because we look at somebody on the outside and we automatically make a judgment about them or a stereotype about them or something like that. Environmental control. How many of you like to have control of what's going on around? Okay, yeah. I thought a few of you might be that way. How many of you like predictability in the sense that you're probably the schedule people like I am, things are predictable. How many of you are just like, I just can't wait for something random to happen, or the unpredictability, and okay, great. So different people, it's just different, okay? And cultures tend to be that way in general. Some cultures tend to be really tight. Change is really difficult, and they focus on safety and security, and the rules are for our good. Okay, that would be more of a tight predictable type of culture. Whereas unpredictability, these are more loose cultures. Change isn't such a big deal. Value, we value flexibility, and the rules are meant to be broken or pushed or extended there. So what you'll find in the places that you'll go is that sometimes individuals function this way, but sometimes even groups, sometimes even entire cultures function this way as well. And then power distance. There are leaders and there are followers. Some cultures will offer a great deal of formal respect for people and their titles and all these kind of things. But you'll go to Australia, for example, and it's just like they could care less about positions and things like that. I remember when Sam Tan was here from New Zealand, and she talked about how they referred to their mayor as a Bob or something, I can't remember his name, but it's not like mayor so-and-so. They just call him by his first, or not their mayor, sorry, their president, just by first name. So it's a little bit more relaxed, loose. So different cultures will have different power distance. Gender roles will be different in different cultures. And again, we think that if you grew up in a particular culture that, maybe guys and girls, the way we interact is fine, and it's okay to handshake or hug or things that might be normal between a male and a female, you might find yourself in another culture and it's very different. It may be inappropriate for you to do that. I've traveled to many Muslim cultures, and I need to be careful because just making eye contact with a woman can be a very wrong thing to do. I'm sending a message I don't want to be sending. So know the places that you're going and some of these values that they have. Communication. Verbal and nonverbal, a couple points here. Everything we do communicates. It's not just what we say, but it's how we say it. Even if I'm not saying anything, I'm communicating something to you. And so we pick up on those cues. The goal of communication, my wife taught me this, the goal of communication is understanding. The goal isn't just for me to know what I want to say and then blurt it out to you and just, okay, communication's happening. And if you're not getting it, I'll raise my voice, because if I raise my voice, then for sure you will get it, won't you? No, you're thinking, why are you yelling at me? Relax. But if I want to make a really important point, I might whisper it. What? So voice inflection, but that's not communication. Those are different techniques. The goal is understanding. So did what I say, or what I even want to do. Maybe I didn't say anything. Maybe I just showed up with roses. That communicated something, by the way. I showed up with roses and didn't have to say a word to my wife. And I'm communicating something right there. Okay? But she was probably more impressed because she got home and I had emptied the dishwasher. The flowers are nice. She said that, but you emptied the dishwasher. Thank you so much. I was like, did you notice the roses? They were more expensive. But anyway. So messages or meanings are conveyed, understood, deepening. Okay, so high context, low context. Some of these things. Some people tend to be a little bit more expressive when they talk. Some people are a little bit more reserved when they're trying to communicate something. Some are more direct and indirect. I don't know where you would place yourself on here. That could be a fun exercise. By the way, if you're going with a group of people, this could be a really good exercise to do with a group. Do you tend to be more expressive or reserved? And then do you tend, when you do communicate, are you direct or are you indirect? Where are you? Because if you know where each other is, this whole process of understanding can be a little bit, come to a little bit easier. So, that's all knowledge CQ. Level of understanding about how cultures are similar or different. I gave you a few domains, or cultural domains there. But notice in this model that you can read about in the book, that we have to move from just knowledge about cultures, things that are similar and different, into interpretation. A couple more things here I think I have here about hot. I'm really sorry about this. You know how to do that, it doesn't help. It's something up there. So anyway, you can sometimes think of cultures as hot and cold. Some tend to be, a hot culture tends to be relationship focused versus task oriented. This should say indirect, it's missing the I there, versus direct. So these are some of the things we've talked about. So another way to think of cultures are hot and cold. Doesn't mean that one is right or wrong. They're just different. So interpretive. How do we move from making these observations? So you learn a little bit about culture, you learn a little bit about the place that you're going. How do we move into this next level of interpretive CQ? I think of it as kind of like driving. When I'm cruising down the road, driving to Sweden on the country roads, you know, I'm not really thinking about it. I'm just kind of driving, just cruising, just going. And I think the speed limit's 55, but I treat it like 70 because there's nobody out there. Unless a combine comes down the road. Anyway, so just driving, I'm just kind of cruising, okay? You've done this as well. You ever find yourself going somewhere and you get there and you're like, I don't even remember the last 10 minutes. I think I was just cruising and checked out there. On the other hand, when I went to New Zealand and I had a few students that I was driving around, both hands are on the wheels, eyes are fully focused in front of me. Why? Because I'm on the other side of the road. Okay? Not the wrong side of the road, the other side of the road. So I'm on the other side of the road driving, trying to not, lose these people who are precious cargo with me. Now, what's similar about those two situations? Swayze and Auckland, New Zealand. I'm driving a car, I'm on a road, I'm going somewhere. So everything is really similar here, but the difference is slight enough that I need to make adjustments here. And I have to pay attention a little bit more because everything feels backwards to me. So when which way is the blinker? My son, who was also with me, kept making fun of me because I was turning the windshield wipers on every time I was trying to turn the blinker on. So it was very similar, but it was different. Here's the point, and Livermore talks about this. He says when we're in our own culture, we move in and out of many kinds of interaction events on mental cruise control. We don't have to work extra hard to understand what someone means by a cliche they throw out or the embrace they offer before we walk away. But when we interact cross-culturally, all of that changes, or at least it should. And he suggests we need to suspend this cruise control, this mental cruise control, and pay close attention to the cues around us. And so the process of becoming more culturally aware is this CQ strategy, this CQ interpretation. Let me move along. Okay, so interpretive CQ is you're driving down the road, but some things are different here, and you gotta read the differences, read the street signs, so to speak, of that culture to understand what's similar and what's different. Okay, so you're interpreting that, and then you behave differently as well. You have to adjust yourself. Behavioral then is kind of letting it move from your head to your heart. Let me close with a story that I think illustrates this, and it kind of it's an experience that I've had, and you'll have your own experiences of kind of moving through this whole process. A few years ago, I went to visit a friend of mine in India, northern India. A guy had called him there. He's doing some mission work there, and he's from southern India, and he's gone up there and just doing some amazing things for God. And he invited me to come and spend some time with him. I had never been to India before. It was my first time. And so I did what probably you were doing. I've done some research on India. I kind of studied the people. I studied the language. I studied the culture. I studied different things, building my knowledge CQ. And I knew some things about cultures. I'd been in different cultures, and I figured, okay, there's going to be some similarities and differences. So my knowledge CQ I felt pretty good about. So I get to India. My first night there, I go to my friend Abraham's house, and we sit down to have dinner. And as we sit down at the dinner table, the first thing I notice, because this is what you do when you go to another culture, you start to observe. You start to watch what other people are doing, what's going on around them. And that's an important thing to do. And what's similar, what's different, how do I adjust, all these kind of things. And I sat down, the first thing I noticed is that only the guys are at the table. Only men are at the table. The women are off to the side in the kitchen, little kids are in the kitchen as well, and only the men are sitting around the table. So, okay, we're going to have, I guess it's guy time here. So I sit down, we start to eat. Actually, he offered a prayer, and the food came out, smells are wonderful. I couldn't wait to dive into this plate, cup, everything. I noticed that they forgot the silverware. And I started to get a little embarrassed for my friend because I was their honored guest. And we sat down, and I've done that before. I've set the table and I forgot to put something out, and I was just like, oh, Well, I quickly realized that I'm stupid. And I realized that a lot, by the way. I noticed that, oh, that's right, I forgot this, that utensils aren't necessarily normal in India. We eat with our hands. And so I was like, okay, this is different. I started to interpret what was going on. In fact, my interpretation was wrong. My first instinct was, somebody forgot to set the table. This is so embarrassing. I feel bad for them. But then I started to watch what was going on around me and realized that, oh, okay, I need to adjust, and I need to learn how to do this wonderful shovel technique with your thumb, where you get the rice and you get the food and the little roti, and you wrap it up together and you pop it in your mouth. And so my behavior had to change through that. So the meal went on, and they're making fun of me because I got food all over me. I mean, both hands, it's coming into my hair, it's on my lap. I don't know what to do with it, it's just everywhere. So we get to the end of the meal, and I do what's normal for me at the end of the meal. I start to get up and get my plate and my cup because I'm such a servant of Jesus Christ. So I think I'm going to get up and I'm going to be such a nice guy. And Abraham says, Jim, you need to sit down. The women will come and take the dishes from you. I said, well, yeah, are they going to eat too? And he's like, well, if there's any leftovers, they will eat. I'm going, why did I have that third helper? I'm such a pig. But inside me, I started to just have this, I have this egalitarian side of me, this justice side of me, and I was raised in a family that valued women differently than other people. And I started, in my mind, thinking that that was the issue here. And it just was bubbling up inside of me. It was everything I could do not to stand up and give a speech on women's rights. I didn't do that, though. I sat there, I submitted, I came and took my plate. And I was really dealing with this perseverance. The conflict I was having was not with my friend. The conflict was this internal thing that I was wrestling with, a value that I had that wasn't necessarily shared. And it wasn't even, you guys might be thinking, well, that just seems so wrong. I thought you said he was a Christian. He is. But in that culture and in that, hospitality there, it was for me. And then there's a male-female thing going on there that whether I like it or not, it was the reality there. And that wasn't the place, that wasn't the time for me to give my speech that I think these people need to hear. Instead, it was the time for me to be humble, to shut up, and to behave accordingly in that type of situation. Learn from it. But I moved into this conflict. You guys are going to have different kinds of conflicts. It might be internal. It might be with the food. It might be with people. It might be with the language. We call that culture shock. It's not like this really, there's not a diagnosis for it, but it's just, you're having kind of this thing where everything that is new and different for you is starting to well inside of you, and you don't know what to do with that. And so this model, I think, will help you as you process some of the challenges that you'll face when you go into another culture. So, knowledge CQ, understanding what's similar and different. You start to interpret those things and watching others and seeing how things are done, looking for cues. How might I behave accordingly, correctly, appropriately in this situation? We move to behavioral. This, for some people, for some people, they go on a cross-cultural experience. It's like the first and last time they ever do it because they just can't handle, all the differences. They're so ingrained in their, way of doing things that they're not willing to adjust. I'm telling you guys, if you don't kind of flex and adjust, you'll break. And you're only going for a short amount of time. Nikki can tell you stories of after 15 years in a place, dealing with culture shock in a different way. You guys know Nikki? She's going to be sharing with you later. I keep referring to her because she's sitting here. But she was an INT student like you and went and served God in another part of the world for a number of years. Then you move into perseverance, where so even the behaviors, even adjusting, even doing things, it's like I had you all sit real close to each other. This is okay for an hour, you could stand it. But what if the entire day you were this close to each other? You would probably, run for your, you didn't move. You can handle it for a while, but it takes perseverance to push through that cross-cultural conflict, whatever it is. But again, you go back to Livermore's point about love. What is your motivation for what it is that you're doing? Maybe it's a love for learning. Maybe it's a love for culture. Hopefully it's a love for God and for people. And that will be the motivation for you as well. So just some thoughts to take with you. This is a topic that I spend a whole semester talking about related to intercultural relationships. But we wanted to give you just a few little things you could take with you as you leave your culture and you go to another one. So I'm done, because I'm a monochronic kind of guy. You starting 2 minutes late.